volunteers to take part in a unique sleep study. This experience may have a significant effect on his current lifestyle.
I work as a paramedic. I go to school full-time, so I live a very busy life.
You have a bit of a bump on your head, but other than that, you're doing pretty good, okay?
I'm also a martial artist. I'm a 4th degree black belt in Goju Karate. My martial art training takes about 17 hours a week.
I got my hand in there.
If I can cut back my sleep, I definitely will. And so this experiment, I want to see, what the health effects are going to be.
Shanann will reduce his sleep from 8 hours to 3 hours every night for a week. Dr. Mohammed Hussein, with Toronto's Tri Hospital, will oversee this scientific experiment.
We are monitoring sleep deprivation as it occurs in the real world. Shanann is a very good candidate for this subject. He's young, he's healthy, he's very disciplined and very focused.
Now just lay down, make yourself comfortable.
To begin the experiment, wires are placed on Shanann for overnight tests. His sleep biology will be recorded and later compared to the results at the end of his sleep study. Over the next week, he'll be under constant surveillance by scientists and cameras.
I was very excited about this experiment. I thought this is an ideal opportunity to monitor and observe what the effects of sleep deprivation are on your physical and mental performance.
Sleep is always at the bottom of my important list, and this is really to see how far I can push that envelope and see what I can get away with.
Experts tell us we need 8 hours of sleep a night. Our body requires a consolidated block of slumber, including deep and shallow sleep every night. Deep sleep revitalizes the body, and dreaming recharges the mind. But with the pressures of modern living, we get around 90 minutes less sleep a night than our ancestors did only 100 years ago. Most of us experience sleep deprivation every year and will carry what's known as a sleep debt. It's like nature's loan shark. It must be returned, or we pay the price. Professor David Dinges knows how the lack of sleep can affect our everyday lives.
You said you sleep well last night?
Well, we have the largest studies ever conducted on experimental sleep deprivation in healthy adults. We have run near to 10,000 24-hour days in the lab of sleep deprivation, looking at all these basic questions of how much sleep you need and what happens to you, and that exceeds all the sleep deprivation studies that have ever been done combined.
Nice frontal lobe desynchronization, so he's attending.
For 20 years, Professor Dinges has been running the world's largest sleep restriction experiment in Philadelphia. At any one time, 5 volunteers live in an enclosed laboratory for 16 days, where they experience up to 4 hours of sleep loss a night. A series of tests are conducted to see how their performance is affected, and the results are used to help understand the risks associated with shortened sleep schedules.
The tests are deliberately selected to tap into a number of different aspects of mental function. So we're looking at attention, speed of reactions, the ability to discriminate things, the ability to remember things.
We will be doing the psychomotor vigilance test.
Well, the most dramatic effect one sees early on is cognitive slowing. You simply cannot think as fast and as accurately as you normally do. The other thing that's dramatic is the problems with attention. You have difficulty being attentive, and you miss key pieces of information. These are called lapses, and what seems to subserve them or underlie them is a phenomenon called microsleeps. It's sleep itself intruding. And approximately beyond 16 hours of wakefulness, you begin to experience impairments that look very much like someone with a 0.08 level of alcohol, which is the legal limit in many countries.
The most significant discovery is that sleep deprivation radically impairs performance. People can make 10 times more mistakes when tired. Surveys show that shift workers make up about 20% of the global workforce. Most average just 6.5 hours of sleep a day. And some reports estimate that tiredness accounts for 1/5 of all workplace accidents. Worker fatigue can be lethal, especially in the healthcare industry.
Interns and residents in the U.S. are working 100 hours per week. 1 out of 5 interns reports having made a fatigue-related mistake that has injured a patient, and 1 out of 20 interns reports having made a fatigue-related mistake that has resulted in the death of a patient.
Get him out, okay.
In Australia, 5% of doctors work more than 80 hours a week. Some work 24-hour shifts.
All right.
To see how tiredness affects behavior in emergency situations, an experiment is set in motion.
The aim of the experiment is to examine the way in which night work impacts on the performance of anaesthetic registrars, particularly looking at the ways in which restricted sleep might change their decision-making behaviour, their ability to diagnose problems and work as a team in the operating theatre.
Just a bit slow this morning. Still a bit tired from last night. Okay.
The sleep-deprived anaesthetist doesn't realize that the operation is deliberately designed to go wrong.
The sabotage today is with the filter leak. Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
Part of the scenario involves a subtle leak in the anaesthetic circuit. The focus is on the anaesthetist. All the other people in the theatre are wired up, and we instruct them to follow the script.
Jane, can you nod or shake your head? Has Tien spotted the leak yet?
Jane,
Yeah?
I think there's a bit of a problem. Let's go. Let's come off of that. There you go. I think there's a bit of a leak. There's a definite leak now. Turn my gas flows up. I think it might be the filter. Have we got
The fatigue group took significantly longer to detect, diagnose and respond to the problems that we provided them. In fact, they took 52% longer. Their performance was in the impaired range. They buy time where possible, double checking, triple checking, all what we'd call performance protection strategies. Those types of delays aren't what we want to see when the problem is time critical.
All right, Jen, that's the end of the scenario. Yeah.
To avoid scenarios like this, increased safety measures are being implemented. Doctors' hours are scrutinized more closely, and sleeping pods are installed in hospitals so that workers can nap in a busy environment. Worker fatigue is dangerous, but there's an even bigger killer that affects us all.
With Expedia, when you book your flight and hotel at the same time, voila! You could save up to $450. And that could come in pretty handy. Where you book matters. Expedia.
We know why we're here. To design the future of flight, inside and out.
To build tomorrow's technology in amazing ways. And reshape the science of aerospace forever.
Around the globe, the people of Boeing are working together for the dreams of generations to come.
That's why we're here.
At Toyota, we care about your safety. That's why we're investing $1 million every hour to improve our technology and your safety. It's an investment that's helped Toyota earn multiple top safety pick awards for 2010 by the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. No other brand has won more. These top safety picks and all our new safety innovations are available at toyota.com/safety.
Imagination. It's the most powerful resource on Earth. And at GE, we're using it right now to create innovative technology that will improve the health of our economy, the health of the Earth, and the health of its people.
think all batteries are the same, consider this. At Iowa Lakes Community College, students are learning how to keep wind turbines working. And to keep them safe, the only battery they trust in their high-voltage meters is a Duracell rechargeable. Duracell, trusted everywhere.
With Expedia, when you book your flight and hotel at the same time, voila! You can save up to $450. And that could come in pretty handy. Where you book matters. Expedia.
Why didn't I back out when I had the chance?
We would like you to take some heroin into Los Angeles.
We had to make a decision, right or left.
$30,000.
All of a sudden,
Can I hear your passport?
I felt complete terror. Find ourselves in a war zone.
Am I going to get out of this?
I'm in deep trouble.
An all-new season of Locked Up Abroad premieres Wednesday at 10 on Nat Geo. Sunday, Nat Geo's new series catches great white sharks. This shark scientist and a team of expert anglers are unlocking the mysteries of great whites.
We're doing something that no one's ever done before.
Drop the cradle!
Expedition Great White. New episodes, Sunday at 10 on Nat Geo.
Drowsy driving causes more than 1 out of 4 vehicle accidents. In the U.S., 250,000 people fall asleep at the wheel every day, and more than 1,500 die each year. On February 28, 2001, fatigue makes headlines in England when a drowsy driver becomes the center of an unprecedented tragedy.
Hello?
Hello, you're through to the police.
Hello, yeah, I've had an accident on the M62. I've gone off the embankment, down off the road, and I'm on the railway line.
All right. And the vehicle's blocking, still on the railway line?
But a train's coming. Oh no, oh no!
Hello? Are you still there?
The vehicle veered off the highway and down an embankment before coming to a stop on a railroad track. Minutes later, a high-speed passenger train hit the vehicle. The train derailed and collided with a freight train traveling in the opposite direction. 10 people died, and another 82 are injured. The driver of the car is 36-year-old Gary Hart. He claims his car suffered mechanical failure, but experts suspect he fell asleep at the wheel. Inspector Mark Iveson is assigned to the case.
The scale of this particular accident was huge. It was classed as the highest-speed road traffic accident in the world at the time. In order to put the case together, we obtained over 2,000 witness interview statements, and that's what the thrust of our investigation was, to establish whether it was linked to sleep deprivation or whether it was in fact a mechanical failure.
Over the next 9 months, sleep scientists and over 1,000 police officers process forensic evidence. And case after case is sent to trial, including those involved in multiple deaths. Several sleep experiments are also conducted to quantify the link between tiredness and driver error. For Gary Hart, key questions are scrutinized. Was he in fact sleep deprived? And could the accident have been avoided? Evidence lies in the tire marks.
Where he'd come off the carriageway and onto that grass verge, it was a very gentle drift. The 4 degrees angle is wholly consistent with a person having fallen asleep at the steering wheel.
When he tells the officers he's been to bed for 2 to 2.5 hours, is in fact a lie.
Evidence and record showed us that he'd had either his landline, his mobile phone line, or the internet connection open throughout the evening prior to the accident, and right through into the early hours of the morning. We were able to show categorically that he'd been awake and without sleep for 22 hours. I was in absolutely no doubt, based on all the evidence that we had, that Hart had fallen asleep at the wheel.
Gary Hart is found guilty on 10 charges of manslaughter by dangerous driving. He serves half of his 5-year sentence and is released in 2004.
This whole catalogue of events was set in motion by a man who drove while seriously sleep deprived. He has fallen asleep at the wheel, and the result is the tragic accident where 10 people lost their lives.
Back in Toronto, Shanann's ability to drive while tired is put to the test.
Okay, Shanann, you're all wired up.
Excellent.
Are you ready to go?
Oh, I'm ready.
Go out and have fun.
See you in a bit.
This is an exercise to determine how Shanann is going to cope with his sleep deprivation. It's a test of his physical and mental performance. During this exercise, he will have lapses of attention where we will be able to record micro-sleep. And you just need a few seconds of loss of attention to cause a serious accident.
In the first test, the instructor uses his arms to direct which way Shanann should turn, deliberately waiting until the last second, so Shanann needs to pay attention.
I wasn't nervous at all. I thought I could drive, and this was going to be a piece of cake. On the first few runs, it actually went pretty good, so I got a little confident and relaxed, and that relaxed, I think, kind of got to me as well. It's kind of fun.
But how will he react to surprises?
That was a little freaky. Didn't expect to see that dog coming out. Let's see if we can get faster this time. Killed Rex. Yeah, when you're sleep deprived, your reaction time is just gone.
Shanann is failing every test, but the instructor has one more in store for him.
Got the mirror there, so I feel quite horrible right now. If I wasn't sleep deprived, I probably wouldn't have hit those at all. Just would have noticed that he wasn't going to move and stopped ahead of time, or slowed down and picked my own route instead of just kind of dozing off and almost forgetting that I was even supposed to turn. And oh.
How did you find the driving test?
Oh, that was a lot of fun.
And you think you did well?
No.
What was your overall performance?
I don't think I did well.
Yeah.
Unless you count, crashing into a bunch of pylons.
What if it was a brick wall?
I hopefully would have used common sense. I'm hoping.
You didn't use common sense?
No.
What if I told you you had 18 microsleeps?
18?
Ranging from 3 seconds to 13 seconds. And the average was 7.8 seconds.
While I was driving.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
A micro-sleep is where the brain grabs a quick nap without your permission. They strike without warning, which is why they're so dangerous. Shanann's poor driving proves that sleep deprivation radically affects his performance. But as his tiredness increases and the sleep debt grows, the next casualty will be his state of mind.
Tomorrow, a night of Locked Up Abroad starts at 8. They each went to exotic places, Jamaica, Mexico, the Philippines, looking to get away, but all have lost their freedom.
I'm getting busted. There's no way around this anymore.
Looking back, I'm like, wow, you idiot.
I was so shocked at what was going on that my whole body was just like buzzing with a numbness.
Locked Up Abroad, tomorrow starting at 8 on Nat Geo.
All we ask is that you keep doing what you've always done. The Lexus RX. Never has a vehicle been designed to feel so natural. See your Lexus dealer.
Thinking about your Florida beach vacation and about what's happening in the Gulf? Well, Florida has 825 miles of beaches, 221 of them here in Northwest Florida. So there's plenty of places in Florida to enjoy crystal clear waters and a great beach vacation. Go to Florida Live at visitflorida.com for real-time information. Navarre Beach has never looked better. Explore Gulf Island's national seashore and surrounding Santa Rosa County by canoe, kayak, bike, or zip line. Visit floridabeachestorivers.com.
Sir, finding everything okay?
I work for a different insurance company. My auto policy is just getting a little too expensive.
With Progressive, you get the name your price option, so we build a policy to fit your budget.
Wow, the price gun.
Oh.
I wish we had this. We just tell people what to pay.
Yeah, we're the only ones that do.
I love your insurance. Bill. Tom?
Hey, it's an office party.
The freedom to name your price, only from Progressive. Call or click today.
Wednesday.
Buying your dream car shouldn't take all day, and it won't. At the Flatibow Automotive Group, where you can buy a car in less than 90 minutes. Start at flatibow.com, shop our entire inventory through our one-of-a-kind e-commerce center. Then come to Flatibow and experience buying a car in less than 90 minutes. Your time is valuable, and at Flatibow, we value your time and your sense of value. So you'll save money too. Flatibow in the Irvine Auto Center.
Jaguar Platinum coverage is not just a warranty. It's a belief in everything we do. It's a 5-year, 50,000-mile promise. With complimentary scheduled maintenance, no-cost replacement of wear and tear items, and 24/7 roadside assistance. Because when you create the most beautiful, fast cars on Earth, you create an ownership experience to match. Jaguar's best-in-class Platinum coverage is included on all 2011 Jaguars. See your Southern California Jaguar dealer for details.
Nat Geo's new series catches great white sharks. This shark scientist and a team of expert anglers are unlocking the mysteries of great whites.
We're doing something that no one's ever done before.
Drop the cradle.
Expedition Great White. New episodes Sunday at 10 on Nat Geo.
In Philadelphia, researchers find new discoveries on how the mind suffers due to lack of sleep.
So go ahead and indicate where you think the blue dot will be next time.
What we're looking for here is what specifically is most affected, and are there certain areas of the brain that seem to be particularly vulnerable to the effects of sleep loss.
One exercise that shows how the brain fails when tired is the Finish the Sentence test.
He mailed a letter without a
stamp.
Too many men are out of
work.
At first you get to give answers that are straightforward, but then we test you on giving us the ends of sentences that are the opposite or unrelated to the context, that is, have nothing to do with it. So you have to inhibit the normal overlearned response and say something that doesn't fit at all. That takes genuine brain power, and that gets eroded when people go through sleep deprivation.
The dog chased the boy out of the
book.
While you're doing a goal-directed task, suddenly your brain shifts into idle. It looks a lot like you're unstable. You're fine, you're fine, you're fine. Then suddenly you start varying greatly. And it's that unpredictability that is the hallmark of sleep loss.
Professor David Dinges tests this unpredictability with a sleep-deprived volunteer going through sleep recovery.
We give you a number like 932, and you must mentally subtract 9 from it, say the answer out loud, then 8 from that, the answer out loud, 7 from that answer, etc. So both numbers are changing.
932, 704, 612, 402.
So he's counting backwards, and he's trying desperately to remember what the number is and what he has to subtract, and then suddenly he goes quiet. So then I say, continue.
What if chemical bath, square root, running pants, took road, up stairwell, up square, unquote, centrifugal Pythagoras.
And he just keeps going on like this until I tell him to stop. And this looks very much like we've induced a kind of parasomnia, that, like you might see in a sleepwalker.
The man experiences what's known as reverie. Our brain retains millions of pieces of information. Usually, they're well organized, so the correct answer can be easily accessed. But during reverie, random thoughts from one part of the brain intrude into another, causing temporary mental disorientation. This experiment is the best documented case of reverie in an individual undergoing sleep deprivation. Even in healthy people, basic mental functioning can collapse when tired.
People differ dramatically in their response to sleep loss. Some have unbelievably high levels of impairment early on, as soon as we take even a little bit of sleep away. And so for some people, it may be really quite dangerous to get even mildly sleep deprived.
One of the dangers is depression. At the University of Michigan, researchers investigate the connection between the lack of sleep and our mood.
Our own research has suggested that the sleep disturbances are there long before the symptoms of depression emerge. Not everybody who has a sleep disturbance will develop depression, but the risk is elevated 5 times.
But the most startling discovery is that teenage depression can result from poor sleep during childhood.
We know that children who have persistent sleep problems in early childhood are much more likely to develop depression in their adolescent years. Even as early as age 3 to 6 years of age, the risk for depression is already elevated in those kids with persistent sleep problems. And typically, the more disturbed the sleep, the greater the risk for developing depression later on.
When children are sleep deprived, they have trouble sustaining deep sleep. Their brain waves look more chaotic than the average healthy sleeper.
There is no group in our society that has lost more sleep per night than children. So children have lost an average of about 10 minutes per night every year for the last 20 years. Children don't become sleepy as adults do when they get sleep deprived, but become much more hyper-aroused. And that's why many sleep-deprived kids are misdiagnosed as having ADHD. And then they're given stimulants. But that's not because the source of the problem has been addressed. They haven't been getting the sleep that they need.
A lack of deep sleep negatively affects our health. But how vital is dreaming? For over 100 years, scientists have tried and failed to create an experiment that reveals why we dream. But recently, one of the world's top dream scientists designed an ingenious demonstration.
So your goal is very simple: stay alive. So in the Alpine Racer study, altogether I think we've run 60 subjects now. And they spend 45 minutes playing the game, and then they take a rest for maybe 15 minutes. Ouch. And then play another 45 minutes. And then they come back that afternoon, they do a third 45-minute session. Ouch. And in the evening, we wire them up so that we can record their sleep. Good night. Good night. And then we see what kind of an awakening we do. And it would be either after 30 seconds, 2 minutes, 3 minutes into their sleep, and asking what sort of images they were getting. How long has he been asleep now?
Well, he's just starting, so he's only been asleep for about 30 seconds.
Why don't we get out to 45 and then we'll do the awakening.
Okay. And do it now.
Okay. Matt, please wake up now. Okay, if you'd report whatever was going through your mind before I woke you up.
Oh, that's kind of weird. I can remember actually being in the game, like an actual racer going down the mountain. And I remember crashing a lot.
So the reports we get at the beginning of the night, 90% of them are actually giving us reports of images of skiing. It's as if the brain has already identified what's important, and that's all that it's playing for you as you fall asleep.
But when Professor Stickgold wakes his subjects up after 2 hours of undisturbed sleep, the dream reports are surprisingly different.
Okay, I'd like you to report what was going through your mind in the period before I woke you up.
This time, Seemed like I was in a castle, maybe like somewhere in Europe.
When we collect dreams from people later in the night and ask them to tell us what that refers to in their waking events, it never replays what happens in the day. It looks like sleep takes memories that you formed in the recent past and strengthens them and integrates them with other memories, so that the next day, the memory is not the same memory that you went to bed with. It might even be more inaccurate than it was the night before, but it's still more useful. That's what dreams are really about, figuring things out that they hadn't figured out while they were awake. And that's a process of searching through networks of memories by mechanisms that aren't as available to us when we're awake.
This experiment supports the notion that we dream to consolidate memories. If we cut back on dream sleep, our brain function suffers.
If you don't sleep and don't get to dream, your brain will push that into waking. You will start hallucinating, probably without exception. It's the whole conscious process breaking down, and you're becoming, at least temporarily, truly psychotic.
Back in Toronto, dream-deprived Shanann Donovan is losing his grip on reality.
It's 3 in the morning. Every night, I start to make any sense, like that sentence.
They've got their eyes open and they're hallucinating almost in parallel with being awake. Very similar to what we see in schizophrenics.
I do have auditory hallucinations. The noise builds and it's almost consuming. My depth perception, my reality was started getting a little bit warped. Reaching for a glass, and I looked over at it, and it looked kind of weird, slightly out of reach.
I noticed that he was twitching his eyes and would stare and then twitch again. And what I realized then was this was a dream sleep mechanism activating.
This rapid eye movement is the signature of dream sleep, and Shanann is starting to dream while awake. Through hallucinations, his world looks totally different. To quantify how Shanann's brain is affected by 5 days of sleep deprivation, a psychologist performed some tests.
I'm going to say a string of numbers. I'd like you to repeat them to me in reverse order. 5, 7.
7, 5.
4, 1, 5.
4, 1, 5. 5, 1, 4.
Okay. 5, 3, 9, 4, 1, 8.
8, 1, 4. 9, 3, 7.
What I'm going to do on this one is I'm going to touch a series of blocks, and I want you to repeat that pattern in the same order that I do. This time I'm going to say some sentences, and rather than anticipating the word that you would expect the sentence to end with, I want you to think of a word that would be atypical or not correct. The boy flew his.
Kite.
The girl drank some.
Water.
Monkeys like eating.
Bananas.
What I'm going to tell you again is that I want you to fill in the last word of the sentence with a word that doesn't seem to belong. Okay?
Yeah.
Shanann is failing the tests because he's unable to think laterally. The reason why is found in his brain. Normally, Many regions of the thinking brain, like the cerebral cortex, communicate with each other to allow us mental flexibility. But during chronic sleep deprivation, many parts of the thinking brain involuntarily go to sleep. If these regions are unable to talk to each other, intelligent thinking is more difficult. Shanann's thinking brain is shutting down. The longer he stays awake, the more abnormal his brain becomes.
We know why we're here. To connect our forces to what they need when they need it.
To help troops see danger before it sees them.
To answer the call of the brave and bring them safely home.
Around the globe, the people of Boeing are working together to support and protect all who serve.
That's why we're here.
Close enough just isn't good enough. If your car is in an accident, make sure it's repaired with the right replacement parts. Travelers, take the scary out of life.
Somewhere in America, there's a doctor who can peer into the future. There's a nurse who can access in an instant every patient's past. And because the whole hospital's working together, there's a family who can breathe easy right now. Somewhere in America, we've already answered some of the nation's toughest healthcare questions. And the over 60,000 people of Siemens are ready to do it again. Siemens. Answers.
Breathtaking. Ladies, hello. It's me again, your TV. I cut your cable to show you a no-brainer, DirecTV. With DirecTV, you can record a show in this room, so the kids can watch it in this room. Or this room. Or perhaps this room. Any room. I'm talking options, ladies. You love them. DirecTV has them. So give them a call. DirecTV. It'll change your life.
At Toyota, we care about your safety. That's why we're investing $1 million every hour to improve our technology and your safety. It's an investment that's helped Toyota earn multiple top safety pick awards for 2010 by the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. No other brand has won more. These top safety picks and all our new safety innovations are available at toyota.com/safety.
Sunday, July 11. It's a $300 billion industry.
Where there is demand, there will be supply.
Global, sophisticated, violent, addictive, deadly, and unstoppable. National Geographic goes inside the worldwide drug trade from every angle.
I got a camera coming through.
First-hand accounts told by the people who survive it every day.
This is what we call the American way.
Drugs Incorporated. The two-night miniseries premieres Sunday, July 11th at 8 with Cocaine on Nat Geo.
You'll have to wait just a few more days. But trust us, it could be worse. All new episodes of Locked Up Abroad start Wednesday at 10.
Sleep deprivation affects the mind and can make us unstable, depressed, and maybe even psychotic. But what does sleep loss do to the body? In Philadelphia, research shows that tiredness can disrupt the body's immune system.
We're doing studies right now looking at the immune system responses, and there's no question there are physiologic consequences to sleep loss that are at a fundamental biological level. The body behaves as though it's under viral attack or there's some risk of that. You can liken it to a kind of immune defense response.
But perhaps the most disturbing find is that sleep deprivation can affect appetite and cause obesity. In Toronto, research links obesity to a dangerous sleep disorder and an increased risk of heart disease.
The major factor that leads to obstructive sleep apnea is obesity. And the reason for that is because if you put weight on, men tend to put it on in the belly and in the neck. And when the neck thickens, not only does it grow outwards, It also grows inwards, impinging on the throat.
Dr. Douglas Bradley specializes in sleep apnea and its effects on the body.
The throat muscles actively keep the airway open when you're awake, and when you go to sleep, when those muscles relax, now instead of it being a rigid, bony, encircled tube, it's now like a rubber tube or a wet straw. So when you suck in on a wet straw, it closes.
Sleep apnea sufferers are unable to sleep and breathe at the same time. When trying to sleep, their throat muscles close and they wake up to avoid dying of asphyxia. Some even wake up 600 times a night.
So Anne, this is the CPAP device.
Dr. Bradley treats patients with a continuous positive airway pressure, or CPAP mask. Invented in 1981, CPAP therapy is the most effective remedy for sleep apnea.
CPAP splits the whole airway open, all the way from the voice box to the tip of your nose. So when you breathe in, your throat gets bigger. When you breathe out, your throat gets smaller. Because you're not waking up so frequently, you can now get into a deep sleep.
Nearly 1 in 10 middle-aged adults has sleep apnea, and most don't even know it. If left untreated, it can be fatal.
We have performed studies in patients with congestive heart failure over the last 10 years or so. We found that in patients who had sleep apnea who did not accept CPAP therapy, that their death rates were twice as high as people who didn't have sleep apnea. The major finding of our study was if you had sleep apnea, you had 3 to 4 times the risk of developing a stroke than if you didn't have it.
And research also shows how the lack of sleep not only affects the heart, but the blood too.
The risk of diabetes increases with age, and we lose a lot of our ability to generate deep sleep. We thought to give healthy young volunteers the sleep of an older person and then to measure their glucose metabolism to see if it moved towards a pre-diabetic state.
But to give a younger individual the sleep of an older person, the research team designs a clever experiment.
My senior colleague, Dr. Tessali, developed this system by which she eliminates deep sleep by sending sounds to amplifiers on each side of the bed. She is there all night watching the screen, and when the subject enters deep sleep, she sends in a signal that is loud enough to bring them back to shallow sleep, but not loud enough to wake them up.
The next morning, the volunteer is given glucose and his blood is taken at regular intervals to see whether his insulin production has become impaired through the lack of deep sleep.
Oh, wow, I can feel it.
When we deprive healthy young individuals of deep sleep, we find that they are at an increased risk of diabetes because their sensitivity to insulin is lower and their beta cells in the pancreas are unable to release enough insulin to compensate for that. The body is interpreting sleep deprivation as a stress, and stress-responsive systems will actually inhibit the pancreas from producing insulin. Chronic sleep deprivation may increase the risk of diabetes by about 50%.
While Professor Van Cotter explores the link between sleep disturbance and type 2 diabetes, she also investigates why sleep loss causes weight gain. Magnetic imaging is used to study the part of the brain that regulates appetite.
So the volunteers receive glucose by mouth, and we measure how their brain imaging changes. The hypothalamus is where the central control of appetite occurs. And so we are interested to see if the hypothalamus becomes sort of deaf to the glucose when an individual is sleep deprived as compared to fully rested. Too little sleep has an adverse effect on the way our body processes glucose, and also seems to dysregulate appetite, resulting in excessive hunger and a risk of weight gain.
Tiredness drives us to eat more because it upsets the balance of the hormones that control appetite.
When you are chronically deprived of sleep, you also begin to release the hormone ghrelin, which is a stimulant to our appetite, makes us feel hungry. And the hormone leptin, which is normally a signal that we've had enough to eat, is decreased in its abundance in our bloodstream. And so suddenly we're getting a stimulus that says, I'm hungry and I'm not satisfied with what I've had. And so we become ravenous. And that may be underlying the epidemic of obesity in our society.
Wednesday.
In 1978, Hollywood made a film about my life. It told the story of my imprisonment and escape from a prison in Istanbul. The story itself was based upon the book I had written. The movie itself changed even the book. Not all of it is valid and true. Now I have a chance to tell my story.
The season premiere of the show the New York Times called one of TV's top 10, Locked Up Abroad, The Real Midnight Express. Wednesday at 10 on Nat Geo.
With Expedia, when you book your flight and hotel at the same time, voila! You could save up to $450. And that could come in pretty handy. Where you book matters. Expedia.
I've seen beautiful things. I've seen the sunrise paint the desert. Witnessed snowfall on the first day of spring. But the most beautiful thing I've ever seen was the image on a screen that helped our doctor see my wife's cancer was treatable.
GE Technologies help doctors detect cancer early so they can save more lives, bringing better health to more people.
There's a better way to get rid of odors on hard-to-wash fabrics. For all things you can't wash, freshen it with Febreze. Febreze eliminates odors and leaves a light, fresh scent. It's a breath of fresh air.
Thinking about your Florida beach vacation and about what's happening in the Gulf? Well, Florida has 825 miles of beaches, 221 of them here in Northwest Florida. So there's plenty of places in Florida to enjoy crystal clear waters and a great beach vacation. Go to Florida Live and visit Florida.com for real-time information. Swim the springs, paddle the rivers, hike the forests, drive the scenic byway, celebrate the seafood, enjoy our many wonders. Visit Wakula.
Was it the number 7 train that carried his barrels across the land? Or was 7 simply his lucky number? Some say there were 7 women in his life, but one held a special place in his heart. Truth is, only Jack Daniel knows the true meaning of old number 7. And we won't be hearing from him anytime soon.
All we ask is that you keep doing what you've always done. The Lexus RX. Never has a vehicle been designed to feel so natural. See your Lexus dealer.
With Expedia, when you book your flight and hotel at the same time, voila! You could save up to $450. And that could come in pretty handy. Where you book matters. Expedia.
If you had a choice between
I look up to you for all the things you do. I hope to be like you someday soon.
Working hard for every smile.
Another reason why Cox is your friend in the digital age.
Expanding our design business in this economy didn't take guts.
It took the right partners and a technology partner like Cox Business. Cox Phone Service is reliable, so no downtime. We even got to keep our phone number.
Their internet gives us more speed for fast transfers, and our static IP gives us more control. Thanks to Cox,
our wheels are spinning faster than ever.
Faster than ever. For a special offer that adds more value to your bottom line, call Cox today.
We're back in shark-infested waters.
We're going to get some monsters this trip. We're super excited.
But this time, the team has a new game plan.
We probably could have caught 2 or 3 of these sharks, but they're not going to advance science, so why would we do that?
New tools.
I think that the ROV is going to be an integral part of this team.
And new science.
If we have a live sperm, it is going to be the first time ever.
Expedition Great White, a new episode next Sunday at 10 on Nat Geo.
It's day 6 of Shanann Donovan's sleep experiment. He's had 15 hours of sleep in 5 days, and his diet is suffering.
Yeah, I've been eating really poor foods during the night. Pizza, chicken wings, ice cream.
This is typical of sleep deprivation, where your body feels hungry, and even though you eat a lot and you're full, it would not turn off that hunger sensation. I could detect that he was suffering the consequences. His fatigue, his droopy shoulders, his droopy eyelids, those were all indications that he was sleep deprived.
A sample of Shanann's blood is drawn to compare to the tests taken at the beginning of the experiment. The results show that his physiology radically deteriorated in just 1 week. Although we can't derive any definite conclusions from Shanann's blood numbers, it's clear that his system is undergoing transformation. Some of his numbers are in normal ranges, while others indicate significant change, which may be a result of sleep deprivation.
It's the stress associated with the sleep debt that causes an elevation in those chemicals. It confirms what we knew about sleep deprivation, that it's harmful to the body.
But how does sleep deprivation affect Shanann's ability to perform martial arts?
I've been training the martial arts for over 20 years. I have my 4th degree black belt. To make the mistakes that I was making is just downright embarrassing. It was absolutely awful. It was disgusting, sloppy. Every time I was doing a spinning kick, the room would keep going afterwards. My mind seemed to know what to do. My body wouldn't do it.
One of the times he's supposed to punch here, punch me in the chin. So he's adapting and making his own things up instead of what he's supposed to do. His mind was going all over the place. I don't think you should probably come back to classes when you're sleep deprived.
Thank you, Kyoshi. My head is just absolutely killing me. I just feel like I'm coming down with a cold. My sense of temperature is just way off the map. I feel like my bones are cold.
I shook hands with him. They were very cold, and that would indicate to me that he's under an extremely stressful situation where his blood vessels are constricted and there was very poor circulation.
In studies performed on animals, a drop in body temperature is a sign that acute sickness or death may follow. Dr. Mohammed Hussein terminates the experiment. Shanann will get a full night of recovery sleep, while a research team monitors every aspect of his health.
I'll see you in the morning.
The sleep actually felt like a long sleep. I had a lot of dreams. This morning, I feel like I have a bit of a sleep debt. I feel between 80 and 90% refreshed. I'm not 100% myself. My energy's a little bit on the low side.
Shanann reviews his sleep study results. For more than 10 seconds. Sleep deprivation has harmed you. Mm-hmm. You have performed much poorer than you had expected to. If we had to continue this for another week and did a blood sugar sample, we would see that your blood sugar levels would be in the diabetic range.
Interesting.
It's going to take you a long time to recover that sleep debt. But perhaps the most surprising result is from the driving test. Well, of the 2 hours of testing that you had a total amount of 25 minutes of sleep.
How was I driving?
You tell me. And what was even more alarming, and I've never seen this before, is that he went into full sleep while operating that vehicle. 25 minutes of sleep was recorded during the road test. Most of the naps occurred when Shanann sat idle between tasks. But sleep was also verified when the vehicle was in motion. This experiment proves that you can be driving a car with your eyes open and yet be fast asleep. If we recorded sleep on his brain activity, how was he operating this vehicle? And of course, what comes to mind is what's called automatic behavior. This is very like sleepwalking, where individuals wake up from their sleep and they move about. When we're tired, parts of our brain go to sleep, even if our body remains awake. Sometimes, we may actually be asleep without our knowledge. Fortunately, the damage caused by sleep deprivation is reversible. All we have to do is sleep. The blood tests performed after Shanann's recovery sleep confirm that all his physiology has returned to normal.
Now that this is all done, I can look back and we have actual scientific proof. We have, data showing that I am not at my best being sleep deprived. It'd be stupid of me to ignore this information, so I definitely will find I'm getting a lot more sleep.
This sleep deprivation experiment has shown that it affects your body physically and mentally, and it points to self-destruction. So if you want to live a normal, healthy life, you need good sleep. Scientists prove that even a small amount of sleep deprivation can lead to a number of diseases. Sleep must be treated with respect and not as something that's disposable.
I think our society is so sleep deprived that we don't remember what it's like to be wide awake. We all walk around in these fogs and we drink our caffeine to help us maintain that alertness, but it's a shabby attempt at producing real full awakeness.
I would be willing to say right now, based on everything I know, there's no chemical substitute for sleep.
Sleep is really the third pillar of health. Like nutrition and exercise, sleep is every bit as important in order to be healthy and effective in what we do during the day.
Like it or not, nature designed our bodies to get about 8 hours of sleep every night. If we mess with nature, we mess with our very lives.
It began in Jerusalem. It ended in Rome. Somewhere in between, a new religion rose up. Now we're on the trail of the first Christians. We'll search for the oldest church, hunt down the identity of the beast, and discover how a meal with the dead and a long-lost pagan cult can unlock the mysteries of the birth of Christianity. He was a peasant who preached about a kingdom of God to a world that already had a king. Sometime around 30 AD, Rome executed Jesus as a rebel. But then, something incredible happened. 300 years later, Rome worshipped him as the Son of God. Every church is a temple to the life of Jesus. The baptismal font, the pulpit, the altar. But the real Jesus would not recognize any of this. For hundreds of years after his death, there were no sacred buildings that we would recognize as churches. As far as we know, the first generations of believers worshipped in their homes.
I think we do have houses that Christians owned. We just don't know it.
To explain how the philosophy of a peasant became the religion of the most powerful men on earth, we have to travel back to the earliest church.
The church would have naturally expanded into this space.
Decode its secret symbols.
They not only made themselves part of Roman culture, but made Roman culture a part of them.
And descend into the darkest corners of Christianity's past.
If we could get in a time machine and travel back and participate in one of their Christian services, we would barely recognize it.
If his crucifixion was meant to kill off Jesus' movement, it did not work.
The most important historical event in the rise of Christianity was the death of Jesus. Whoever executed Jesus made a very big mistake. His execution clearly led to the rise of what is today the dominant Western religion.
But exactly how Christianity rose from this crushing blow is a mystery. In the days after his death, the men and women who had followed Jesus suddenly found themselves at a fateful crossroads. They once had a teacher. Now, they just had the memory of him.
Before there was anything written about Jesus, we have the oral tradition, the memory of what Jesus said and did.
These first followers made the drama of his death and the compassion of his day-to-day echo down the generations. But how? The disciples were living in turbulent times. Jerusalem was under Roman control. Jesus had already paid the ultimate price for stepping out of line. Now the disciples needed to find a way to continue Jesus' ministry without getting arrested themselves. But their first task was to decide exactly what their teacher's message was.
The disciples are struggling to understand who Jesus was, why he was important, what it means to be Jewish, determining the proper relationship to Jewish scripture and tradition and history was one of the most central things in determining the character of Christianity.
One of the final acts of Jesus' life took place in Jerusalem's sacred temple during the annual Passover festival. Hundreds of thousands of Jews had come to sacrifice a lamb and renew their ancient bond with God. But Jesus ran roughshod over this holy space and this holy week. He saw the temple tainted by commerce and peasants paying excessive temple taxes. This act of violence almost certainly factored into Jesus' execution at the hands of Rome. Overt attacks on the establishment would be suicide for the disciples. But they had another memory of what Jesus did, an act less likely to provoke Roman reprisal. Baptism. When Jesus met John the Baptist in the River Jordan, the Bible says it was the spiritual turning point in his life.
He saw the heavens torn apart and the Spirit descending like a dove on him.
The ritual of immersing in water was as old as Judaism itself. All Jews had to cleanse their bodies in a ritual bath before entering the Jerusalem temple. But John the Baptist called Jews to the River Jordan for a deeper purification, one that reached down to the soul.
The baptism of John was something a little different. It had more connotations than ritual purification. It was a sign that one also wanted to make some kind of change in one's life.
Now that Jesus was gone, the disciples asked new recruits to follow his example and change their lives by coming to baptism.
Peter said to them, "Repent and be baptized, every one of you, in the name of Jesus Christ."
But in the first decades after the crucifixion, turning to Jesus did not yet mean turning one's back on Judaism.
The first generation were distinctively Jewish. So they didn't think they were leaving Judaism. They didn't think they were becoming Christians. They thought they were embracing a particular way within their own faith. That is, by the acknowledgement of Jesus as Messiah.
Piecing together those first years of Christianity is not easy. The disciples left no clear historical trace. The Bible's book of Acts portrays them carrying on the ministry of Jesus as it began, as traveling healers and preachers.
Then Peter and John laid their hands on them, and they received the Holy Spirit.
The first Christian missionaries walked penniless from village to village, just as Jesus had.
The people who spread Christianity were not wealthy, so they were dependent upon local hospitality economically as a place to stay, to have a meal.
Evidence from a first-century Christian text suggests the messengers of Jesus were not always welcome. Some early missionaries stopped to enjoy local hospitality too long.
If he remains 3 days, he is a false prophet.
There's some indication from early Christian texts that there were disciples that went out in Jesus' name and tried to make a living out of it, and were more or less con men.
Following in the footsteps of Jesus could not have been easy.
The Christians in this early period were a tiny, underfunded minority, a blip on the radar screen of Roman history. If you had asked anyone back then, would you believe me if I told you Christianity is going to be the dominant religion of Western civilization for the next 2,000 years, they would have thought you were out of your mind.
But one man was about to walk into history. A man who found a new way to talk about Jesus, who would redefine what it meant to be Christian.
He was actually the first to believe that you could become a Christian without first becoming a Jew.
And who would spread this new faith across the world's greatest empire.
Wow, it's even bigger than I thought.
Welcome to Progressive.
Do you guys insure Airstreams?
Yep, everything from travel trailers to mega motorhomes. And when your RV is covered, so is your pet.
Perfect. Who wants a picture with Flo?
I do.
Do you mind?
Gotta make sure this is hot. Okay. Everybody say awkward.
Protecting your family fun. Now that's Progressive. Call or click today.
You've seen me before in places like this. You've seen the children in these desperate neighborhoods, too poor for words. But what you haven't seen is a child like Isaac, standing in a doorway, asking, "Did you bring me a sponsor? Is there someone to help me?" So many children like Isaac are waiting, hoping someone will help them, living in a world without enough food or clean water or hope that tomorrow will be any better than today. Call the number on your screen or go to childfund.org and sponsor a child today. You'll get letters and updates to see how your contribution is making a real difference. For over 70 years, Child Fund has changed the lives of millions of children in the U.S. and around the world with healthy food, clean water, vaccinations, and education. If Isaac walked up to you and asked, "Will you be my sponsor?" would you turn and walk away?
Call 800-572-1135 or go to childfund.org to sponsor a child today.
When your pet is lost, all you want to do is find them safely and as soon as possible. Every year, countless pets are euthanized because their owners cannot be found quickly. Introducing SmartTag, the leader in pet recovery and protection. Here's how it works. Call or log on to smarttags.com and report your pet missing. SmartTag's trained recovery specialists will call your vet and email and fax your pet's information to shelters and rescues within 50 miles of your lost pet. When someone finds your pet and contacts SmartTag, the recovery specialist will connect them directly to you. SmartTag will call your home, work, and cell until they find you. Only the SmartTag recovery system guarantees its 24/7 service to recover your lost pet in 6 hours or your money back. It will give you 12 months of pet recovery service and a custom ID tag for just $19.95. We guarantee to recover your pet in 6 hours or your money back. Call or log on today.
Tomorrow, a night of Locked Up Abroad starts at 8. They each went to exotic places, Jamaica, Mexico, the Philippines, looking to get away, but all have lost their freedom.
I'm getting busted. There's no way around this anymore.
Looking back, I'm like, wow, you idiot.
I was so shocked at what was going on that my whole body was just like buzzing with a numbness.
Locked Up Abroad, tomorrow starting at 8 on Nat Geo.
I knew I was way too smart and good looking to ever get arrested.
Yeah. An all-new season of Locked Up Abroad starts Wednesday at 10.
The reach of Rome in the first century was vast. It swallowed the Mediterranean and made millions of people subject to its law. Jesus grew up in this world. He watched as his fellow Galilean peasants were sucked dry by rapacious taxes and spoke out against the emperor as a false god. But there's an irony to this story. If it were not for Rome's network of roads and one Roman citizen, Jesus' message may never have left the Holy Land. The Bible begins the story like this. A Jewish man called Saul is on his way to Damascus to arrest new converts to Jesus' movement, when something incredible happens.
A light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?"
This powerful vision of Jesus changes Saul. He adopts a new name, Paul, and a new cause.
Paul himself does tell us that he had a revelatory experience, that he was addressed by God, that he was shown this Jesus as the Messiah. And it's that moment that really turns him into a follower of Jesus.
Paul became a fervent believer and a prolific writer. His letters to early Christian groups in Corinth and Rome are the oldest writings in the New Testament.
We tend to think that Paul is the most important person in the first years after Jesus. His legacy has come down to us so strongly because people saved his letters, because they thought the letters were worth saving.
Paul's letters tell us most of what we know about being a Christian in the middle of the first century. They also paint a portrait of Christianity's most successful missionary.
Well, we know from Paul's own letters that he didn't consider himself a very good speaker, but we do know from his letters that he was very, very determined.
Between about 40 and 60 AD, Paul made 3 epic journeys across the Eastern Roman Empire to what is now Turkey and Greece. Paul first sought to spread the message of Jesus to Jews who had settled there centuries earlier, but he also targeted another group.
So Paul began to speak. You Israelites and others who fear God, listen.
In the ancient city of Miletus on the western coast of Turkey, a piece of antique graffiti explains who these God-fearers in Paul's audience were.
One of the most important inscriptions that's been found here is an inscription that reserves seating for not only Jews, but also for God-fearers. God-fearers were not full converts to Judaism, but were a group of people that admired the Jewish way of life. And this is the inscription that reserves this for the Judeon, the Jews, and also the Theosebon, God-fearers.
God-fearers attended synagogue each Sabbath, but they were not circumcised and therefore not actually Jewish. Paul wanted to change this.
Paul's message was that while there is an Israel, which is the Jews, people, because of their belief in Jesus, can enter into Israel without being Jews.
The words of Paul's letters reveal that the first houses of worship were in fact private homes.
Aquila, Prisca, with the church in their house, to Nympha and the church in her house, to Philemon and to the church in your house.
In fact, the word we read as church in Paul's letters is the Greek word ekklesia. Ekklesia does not imply a structure of any sort.
The term ekklesia is actually just a word meaning congregation or assembly. It means to pull a group together.
The New Testament mentions dozens of these congregations meeting across what is now Turkey and Greece. Not a single house church has ever been identified. They had no altars, no stained glass, no icons of the crucifixion.
We can't differentiate a house in which a group of Christians might have met from any other house down the street.
Archaeology cannot help us discover the layout of a first-century house of Christian worship. But Paul's words can lead us to the rituals that took place within those walls. Rituals Paul used to keep the memory of Jesus alive.
One of the key rituals in early Christianity is the sharing of food, the communal meal. And that has its roots in the memory, the recollection of the Last Supper before Jesus' crucifixion.
At that fateful meal, Jesus symbolically passed on his power to his disciples. The bread was his body, the wine his blood. Paul believed repeating that ritual allowed Christians to share in Jesus too.
The cup of blessing, is it not a sharing in the blood of Christ? The bread, is it not a sharing in the body of Christ?
Celebrating the Lord's Supper caught on fast with pagan converts. Dining was a major part of their lifestyle. Now it became part of their religion. Paul saw the meal as a chance to break down social barriers in a world of super rich and super poor.
All who are present are equal. There's no more hierarchy, there's no more division between people, but all are one in Christ.
There is no longer Jew or Greek. There is no longer slave or free. There is no longer male and female. For all of you are one in Christ Jesus.
But equality didn't come easily. Around 54 AD, Paul wrote an angry letter to the Christians in Corinth after he heard about arguments at their dinner table.
When the time comes to eat, each of you goes ahead with your own supper, and one goes hungry and another becomes drunk.
And what he's so upset about is that the rich and wealthy would come early and eat up all the food and get drunk on all of the wine, and that the poor who had to work all day would then come a bit later, and there wouldn't be enough to eat and there wouldn't be enough to drink.
And so it really isn't the Lord's Supper as he sees it, which is that everybody comes together and everybody eats the same food.
But these squabbles were nothing compared with what was to come. Before the first century was over, Judaism would have to fight for its very survival, and Christians would face an epic struggle against an enemy they called the Beast.
Wednesday.
In 1978, Hollywood made a film about my life. It told the story of my imprisonment and escape from a prison in Istanbul. The story itself was based upon the book I had written. The movie itself changed even the book. Not all of it is valid and true. Now I have a chance to tell my story.
The season premiere of the show the New York Times called one of TV's top 10, Locked Up Abroad, The Real Midnight Express. Wednesday at 10 on Nat Geo.
If your bike crashes, so do you. That's why you need to call now for Allstate Motorcycle Insurance. For the price of insuring your bike, it can also protect you for as low as $100 a year. Call now, 1-877-361-BIKE for a fast free quote. And what if you have a passenger on your bike? Don't worry, with Allstate Motorcycle Insurance, they're covered too. All for as low as $100 a year. No one protects a rider better than Allstate. Call now, 1-877-361-BIKE.
When your pet is lost, all you want to do is find them safely and as soon as possible. Every year, countless pets are euthanized because their owners cannot be found quickly. Introducing SmartTag, the leader in pet recovery and protection. Here's how it works. Call or log on to smarttags.com and report your pet missing. SmartTag's trained recovery specialists will call your vet and email and fax your pet's information to shelters and rescues within 50 miles of your lost pet. When someone finds your pet and contacts SmartTag, the recovery specialist will connect them directly to you. SmartTag will call your home, work, and cell until they find you. Only the SmartTag recovery system guarantees its 24/7 service to recover your lost pet in 6 hours or your money back. We'll give you 12 months of pet recovery service and a custom ID tag for just $19.95. We guarantee to recover your pet in 6 hours or your money back. Call or log on today.
If you had a choice between
At Grand Prix Performance, we have a simple philosophy. When customers come first, they come back. Combine that with our commitment to service and our huge selection, including Michelin tires. And you'll see why we've been Orange County's premier tire, wheel, and service center since 1971. At Grand Prix Performance, we understand that it's not just about how your car performs under our care. It's also about how we perform for you. Featuring Michelin tires, the #1 choice of premier car manufacturers because of their precise and perfect feel. Grand Prix Performance in Costa Mesa. Come in once and we think you'll come back for life.
So I'm thinking about getting internet from the phone company.
Don't do it.
What?
It's okay. I'm with pals.
People against lousy service.
Yeah, we believe you deserve to know that Cox has the #1 internet service that blows DSL away. Plus, it gives you power boost for an extra burst of speed.
You're my hero.
I'm not a hero. I'm a hot dog.
We're back in shark-infested waters.
We're gonna get some monsters this trip. We're super excited.
But this time, the team has a new game plan.
We probably could have caught 2 or 3 of these sharks, but they're not going to advance science, so why would we do that?
New tools.
I think that the ROV is going to be an integral part of this team.
And new science.
If we have live sperm, it is going to be the first time ever.
Expedition Great White, a new episode next Sunday at 10 on Nat Geo.
"2,000 years ago, there was one thing that all religions shared: animal sacrifice. Judaism, along with almost every other pagan religion around the Mediterranean, needed blood. It was a way of giving thanks to God, or of atoning for sin. But a man called Paul decided that Christianity could be different. The letters he wrote just 20 years after Jesus died traced the evolution of a new way of worshiping. Paul said for Christians, there was only one meaningful sacrifice: Jesus on the cross in Jerusalem. To the Romans, it was a criminal's execution. But in Paul's mind, Jesus' blood replaced that of the sacrificial Passover lamb. And as Christians reenacted the Last Supper, they formed a sacred link to Jesus and his suffering without shedding one drop of blood.
Everyone who believes is set free from all those sins from which you could not be freed by the law of Moses.
Christians are set apart by the fact that they don't practice Jewish law. They don't engage in Jewish ritual practices.
Even though Jesus himself had lived by Jewish law, and even though Jesus was circumcised, Paul did not ask any of this of Gentile converts. Paul proposed baptism as the new rite of initiation.
What Paul was able to do was to say, no, you can really be in Israel without having to be circumcised, and circumcision, to be realistic, was in those days much more dangerous for an adult who wanted to convert to Judaism.
It was a radical break from Jewish tradition. But forces greater than Paul were about to divide Judaism and Christianity. In 66 AD, Jewish resentment against Roman rule in Judea exploded into open rebellion. Rome came down hard, slaughtering Jews by the tens of thousands. And in 70 AD, leveling the temple in Jerusalem. It was a crushing blow to the Jewish people. But Rome saw it as a triumph. A monumental arch still commemorates the victory. It proudly displays the menorah Roman soldiers took from the sacred temple.
I don't think really that you can talk about Christianity as a separate religion until after the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. Sometime after that, Christianity becomes a distinct and separate religion from Judaism.
The Romans are tending now to consider Jews as being a rebellious people. So the Christians want to put as much distance as they can between themselves and the Jews, in the Roman eyes at least.
But if Christians thought distancing themselves from Jews would offer them protection from Rome, they were mistaken. Their growing ranks were making waves in the pagan empire.
The Romans are very concerned that Christians are attracting people and telling them to quit sacrificing to the gods, to give up all kinds of pagan practices that would have been central to community life in the Greco-Roman world.
In 44 BC, Emperor Augustus spied a comet and declared it was his father, Julius Caesar's soul, becoming a god. Ever since that day, the Caesars had been divine. There was a temple to the emperor in every Roman city. Sacrifice to it was obligatory. Jews were exempt from this law, but Christians perplexed Roman authorities.
These Christians didn't seem to have a god at all. In fact, the charge against the Christians was atheism. Where is your temple? Where is your God?
They met in ordinary houses. Their meetings often turned into ecstatic group trances, where people spoke in tongues. The Bible says Paul's religious activism finally got him arrested. Although there's no written evidence of his death, many Christians believe the Emperor Nero ordered him beheaded in Rome sometime around 65 AD. But Paul's death did not stop Christianity. It continued to spread into the Roman world. Roman author Pliny the Younger first encountered Christians around 115 AD. We still have a copy of a letter he wrote to the Emperor Trajan asking what to do about them.
Pliny was appointed as a governor to Asia Minor, and he came across some of these Christians. And he's writing back to Trajan for guidance. I've told them to stop, and they won't. What should I do? Trajan writes back and he says, the very fact that you've told them to give this superstition up, and they won't, is worthy of death. Go ahead.
Pliny recorded how he decided who should get a reprieve.
Those who offered prayer with incense and wine to your image, I thought should be discharged.
And the Romans were tolerant of religion as long as it did nothing to disrupt the stability of the empire. But if you got involved in anything that seemed to threaten the stability of their system, then they could put their foot down, and they could put their foot down hard.
As Christians grew in numbers at the turn of the 1st century, the struggle with Rome intensified, and it spawned the New Testament's most controversial book, Revelation.
The beast will make war on them, and their dead bodies will lie in the street.
The book seems to be a warning to 7 Christian churches in Asia Minor of an approaching Armageddon. But historians see it differently.
Most people think of the book of Revelation as talking about the future. But if you understand the historical context in which the book of Revelation was written, you recognize a series of hidden clues and symbols that suggest that what the book is really about is resisting Roman power and resisting the imperial cult.
All 7 churches of Revelation were in cities that had cults for worshiping the emperor. And the key demonic character, the beast, seems to be a metaphor for Rome itself.
I will tell you the mystery of the beast with 7 heads. The 7 heads are 7 mountains.
When the book of Revelation refers to the 7 hills, everyone would have known that's Rome. After all, even in antiquity, they called it the city on 7 hills.
The apocalyptic battles of Revelation would have made 1st century readers think back to the Roman sacking of Jerusalem, not forward to some coming war. But one riddle in its pages has echoed down through the ages.
Let anyone with understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a person. 666.
Ancient Greeks gave every letter of the alphabet a number. 666 is Chi, Psi, Sigma. This counting trick, called gematria, can turn any person's name into a number. If you take the name Emperor Nero in Greek, Neron Caesar, and turn it into Hebrew, the numerical sum of the letters is precisely 666.
The number 666, I think, is clearly Nero. When you spell it out in gematria, the book of Revelation was written after Nero, but the time when a Nero cult was very popular in Western Asia Minor.
Is Revelation a political attack by Christians on an emperor worshipped as a god? In 1895, men digging through an ancient garbage dump in Egypt found fragments of a copy of the apocalyptic book. This papyrus dates to the 3rd century and is the oldest surviving scrap from Revelation. It also forced historians to recalculate the number of the beast. The Greek letters Chi, Iota, Sigma add up to just 616. But far from undermining the link to Nero, this variant actually seems to confirm it.
I'm inclined to think it's Nero for one main reason, and that is that Nero can be spelled 2 different ways, either Nero or Neron with an N at the end. And of course, N has the numerical value of 50.
Spell Nero's name in Latin, and then do the Hebrew math, and the sum is 616. Whether the number of the beast is 616 or 666, the identification sticks. It is the same man, Nero. When Christians first read Revelation at the close of the 1st century, Domitian was emperor. But there was a widespread belief that Domitian was the reincarnation of Nero. The author of Revelation believed Christians must turn to the resurrected Jesus, not the resurrected Nero.
If you participate in the religious and social life